It can be said, it can be argued that The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is one of the greatest comedies of all time. And so when the idea of a Bel-Air, sort of a reboot, reimagining came, the only way that you can really get away with it, because that mountain is so high up there, is to sort of do a dramatization, a drama of that story. And so the first 3 episodes of the new Peacock series, Bel-Air, have dropped. I'm going to give you my thoughts and reactions right after the jump. Hello everyone, Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you'll be among the first to know. You know when's a terrible time to release a new series? During the Super Bowl or Valentine's Day weekend. But here we are. First 3 episodes of the new series, Bel-Air, finally dropped. It's going to be a weekly show, but a lot of these new series, when they come out, unless they drop all of their episodes, they've been dropping the first 3 to sort of give you a taste, an idea of what the series is going to be, and let's sort of act as a launch pad to see if it's something you're going to be a part of. And I will say that after watching the first 3 episodes, it is there's more to like than not to like. It is a bit of a mixed bag, but I can see that there is something positive occurring in the future for this. I will go through each episode, but just to kind of, the biggest thing that I can sort of take away is this is less where I thought they were going to be taking a comedy, which that comedy was a family comedy about the Banks, about Will getting into trouble, coming over, and being a family comedy about the entire family. This is more of a high school drama about Will and Carl, and then has some familial elements that happen with the family. Because of that, there are some characters that sort of get left out. Because she's not age appropriate, Ashley Banks is just an afterthought. She's there because I think the original show had a 3rd child and Ashley Banks was there, but because she's not in high school yet, or if she is, she's definitely not old enough to be sort of running in that same crowd. But because she's not a part of that, there's these first 3 episodes, outside of Ashley making a quip to sort of egg on her parents, she's just there. Like, she doesn't go up to any of the school functions. She's literally only here for the purposes of that the original show had a 3rd child. Outside of that, all the other characters do have some sort of varying degrees of what they were on the show. And I think that's sort of the biggest thing, sort of the first episode, Dreams and Nightmares. Yes, it is named that because of the Meek Mill song and connection, which has a part within the episode. Very Philly, but the family sort of gets established there. That first episode, Dreams and Nightmares, sort of establishes all the characters, and we sort of know the story. You know it. I got in one little fight, my mom got scared, which actually comes up in a little tongue-in-cheek wink-wink nod to the audience. But it's a lot more realized and a lot more realistic. The first episode, we have Will with his friend Trey, who he's on top of the world at the high school. He is the king of the high school. He's one of the best. He's a D1 athlete. He's got VCU coming to look at him to try to get a scholarship to school. Like, he is big shit at his school. But you get the wheelie bikes, you get Philly, you get that essence of what Philly, the lingo, the language, the dialect, the slang, it's all in there. Philly cheesesteaks. But what happens is Will, being the big man, he's also the big man known to the streets. And unfortunately, there are some people who are not as happy that he is the big man and possibly going on to make himself. They want to sort of bring him down or see if they can ruffle up his feathers again to bring him down to their level and maybe get him into some shit. So while he and Trey are just hanging out, chilling, well, I stand cool in the, while that's happening, a D-boy sort of comes up to him and says, "Hey man, you're not that good. This is still my streets. I still run this. And if you want to show that you got any balls, I dare you to show up to the court tonight and show me what you got." And he does. Will in this is and Jabari is doing a fantastic job, by the way. I think while I do have hesitations about a couple of things in this show, he is what makes this all work. He is the glue. He's charismatic, and he's got enough of the bravado and sort of braggadociousness where it doesn't become distasteful or like so disarming, but it's perfect in that he has a swagger to him. But in that, he's also a hothead. And sometimes he sort of lets that get to him. He's like, no, this is my street. You're not going to just come and punk me. So he goes, shows up to the park. But in doing so, Trey kind of like, yeah, we're stepping into the lion's den. And in doing this, we should be strapped up. So because the gentleman, the D-boy, showed him his strap, thus they felt like they needed to have one to sort of protect themselves. And they go and Trey and Will give him the business. And Will has the thing about beating you and then making fun of, making you feel like the smallest person in the world. And that's sort of what he does to the D-boy, who then throws a ball to sort of start some shit and hits the head D-boy, who is not somebody that you want to play with. And they commence to, he doesn't know who threw the ball. You've seen like sort of like the opening of the show, but where that was all more comical, they were spinning him around. They commenced to beating and stomping the hell out of Trey. And then to get them off, Will goes to the bag, grabs his gun, shoots a couple of warning shots up in the air. People disperse, but the police show up. They rough up Will, and he and the D-boy go to prison, go to jail overnight, while Trey goes to get his wounds licked up. He's pretty banged up, but nobody's snitching. That's sort of the rule of the streets, and you all know that. He gets threatened while he's in prison, while he's behind bars. They're both in jail together. Will's crying. He's freaking out. A lot of it because he was sort of roughed up, and he felt mistreated. Like they didn't really ask him questions. They sort of threw him to the ground, pressed his face in. You know how it is. The black man in Philly, arrested by some cops. It didn't feel the best. But he's released the next day, much to the surprise of everybody there. And like, wait, what did you do? And then people are like, oh, you snitched. You did all of that. But his mom has gotten him in the car. She's like, yo, your bag's packed. I'm getting you on a flight. You're getting the hell up out of here. She lets him know that your Uncle Phil has pulled some strings to make this happen. You're getting a second chance because you had to, for some reason, you thought it was a good idea to have your hands on a gun while you're a smart kid. You get a 97s on tests. You know what it is you're doing. You were so hot-headed in the moment that you didn't think, and now you put your life in danger. We got to get you the hell out of here. They get on a plane. She puts him on a plane. He's freaking out, and we thus get the premise of this entire show. And so he lands and is on a car ride, picked up from the airport. It seems like he might be doing an Uber drive. He's hustling. He's getting his thing on. But Jazz is introduced there, and that's where he meets this version of Jazz. It's not so much a friend from Philly that he knew from childhood, but this is a friend who is from Philly. He knows that he's like from West Philly, and they both sort of share that together. But he's been in LA long enough to sort of show himself through the ropes. And they pull up to the house, and we get a sort of an introduction, a smattering of the Bankses in this world. And the Bankses in this world live in a massive home, and the family dynamic is still basically the same as we would expect, with some tweaks here and there for this dramatization. Aunt Viv still loves her Will. She's originally from Philly, like we would expect. Misses some of that Philliness and like that he's traditionally and authentically himself still, but she has definitely grown out of that and is doing more of this not necessarily a housewife, but the wife to somebody who was running for office. And Uncle Philip Banks is doing for a high seat here. And she's sort of playing the side candidate to that when we later find out that she has a huge passion for art that has been sort of quashed because of her supporting her husband. And it seems like there might have been more to it. It seems like he may have put the kibosh on all of that, but we'll get that as we go along. That's her. Hillary is a little bit different. She's still fashion forward. She's still that, but she's not the ditzy blonde anymore. She has dropped out of school, but it's so she can do her passion of cooking. She's an excellent cook, a phenomenal cook. Everybody talking about her. She's an influencer like this. She's on YouTube with thousands and thousands of followers. But she is doing it her own way. She wants to do her own style, while her mother seems to try to be forcing her more to kind of do something more with it, like get a job, get money, do this. It does not feel like she believes in Hillary the way that Hillary believes in herself, and they sort of butt heads quite a bit. I mentioned Ashley, irrelevant to the show. She's a little girl that's like, a big whale, cool, but there's really nothing to that character. And then Uncle Phil, who we know Avery, back in the day, is this larger-than-life character, also voiced the Shredder. Here is played by a more slimmed-down Suave, but you can tell that he is also of the street, and he's a guy who is trying to make a name for himself, and his family is sort of acting sometimes as props, but also a part of all of this to get him that next seat, that next level of the table. Sounds like he's sort of having an issue with bringing in Will because he knows that some of this could rub off and sort of deter all what he is trying to accomplish, but he doesn't want Will put in a situation where his life's in danger. He loves Will. He doesn't want to see him die. There's even a heartfelt moment at the end of this episode where he asks him, like, yo, Will, what do you want to do? Do you want to live or die? And he's like, no, I don't want you to die either. And they sort of have that moment where it's clear that there's an agenda, there's a thing that he wants, and he doesn't want this to mess up, but he actually genuinely wants the best for Will. And it's great to see those layers get peeled back as the series continues on for them. We get a shot of Lisa, who is played by Nia Long in the original series, sort of being here, their girlfriend, and she sort of becomes this foil, very much like Art Riverdale, where Archie and Jughead, and then there's the Veronica in the middle. That's sort of what this is with Will, Lisa, and Carlton, because Lisa used to at some point date Carlton, but she now is feeling Will, and that creates a whole tension for that first episode as we introduce the Carlton of it all. Carlton is where my hang-up of this show comes in. I get it in that you are creating a series, and if your main drama, your thesis of antagonistic folks is a D-boy that's in Philly that is no longer in LA, it's going to take an overarching story to get that story and that villain to come here. So you can't always rely on the villain that is there or the antagonist that's there. So you have to create one on a one-to-one. So this show then becomes this weird high school drama. And it feels very much like a CW show at times. That happens to also still have the sheen of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Very much like All American. They have made Carlton almost completely unlikable. And I don't think, as much as people would like to say that Alfonso Ribeiro character was different, he was at least charming in that. There's nothing charming about this Carlton, so it just comes off that he's a dick. To his family, to his cousin, he comes off as this spoiled brat. He's also a druggie, which I think all the other things I would be perfectly fine with in this show if he wasn't also a druggie. Like, I'm okay with him being the guy who was the man on the campus, but then Will comes in and sort of buck that system, and now they're going tit for tat over a girl, all that stuff. But it becomes very juvenile quickly, and less about the family and more about this high school thing that goes back and forth. Plus, you've made him a drug addict. That's a lot. That's a lot of just angst that you sort of put on this one character, and he's sort of left to kind of hold up that groundwork, and just makes you. I don't think you want the audience to completely dislike that character, because as a family dynamic, you're eventually going to probably have to start liking him again. Apparently, he suffers from anxiety, so that's why he's taking all these snorting of all his drugs, but it reads so bad in these first few episodes that I'm like, I don't think I'll ever be able to really come around to enjoying him. His performance is fine. It's probably the character that I care the least about, and the performance that I care the least about. But I think you're supposed to a little bit. There is a sequence in his first episode where Will goes to school with Carlton, and Carlton is the king there, and he's on the rugby team. One of the few black folks that are on the rugby squad, and they're sort of Will's kind of walking around, getting the lay of the land, getting to learn it. He's not actually at the school yet, but he's sort of just getting the lay of the land. And he overhears in the locker room Connor, one of the other co-captains, like the druggy pusher for Carlton's all drugs that we find out. But he's just using the N-word in a rap song all the time, and Carlton's in there dancing with him. And it's a jarring thing that this series does a good job of talking about code switching and not being black enough, or being too black, or being hood enough when to turn that off, and forgetting where you come from. All of that sort of plays a part. Where we had hints of that in the comedy series, it is now what the basis of this is. And so you kind of get this back and forth between Carlton saying like, oh, you don't think I'm black enough because I'm like you say the N-word, or the speech that this is probably why I hate this character, but that slogan of that thing that I absolutely hate, where people would be like, hey, you expect music that has this N-word in there all the time, and you expect him not to say it? But yes, that's the correct way. Yes, I do. If a white person should not be saying that word, no matter what. The white people can do whatever the fuck they want to do all the time. That word should not be said by them. But Carlton has this thing where he backs him up, and Will's like, no, that's not how that works. And so that's where that sort of dynamic starts. It then gets fleshed out even more because there's a situation where Will starts pushing up on Lisa, who used to date Carlton. Will does not know this originally. Lisa does do the smart thing of giving him the heads up. Doesn't stop Will. Will still wants it. And they're just kicking it at this party that Carlton has sort of invited Will to. They go to this party. Because at the very least, let's go to this party together. Because if nothing else, we can show solidarity that if I am good enough and we're good enough to go to this party, maybe they'll start letting me not, my Uncle Phil and I'll be able to start letting me not have to always be with you. Carlton's like, yeah, that's cool. At the party, already drugged up and angry and taking more drugs, and everybody's drinking, Will is kissing on Lisa. And Connor is already sort of gassed up Carlton. They'd be like, hey, go get your girl back. You want to talk to your girl. He turns around and sees that his girl is kissing up on his cousin. And in a drug, angry rage, whatever, little pill popper, little snorter actually, he goes around the pool and he just shoves Will into the pool. Will can't swim, so he starts to drown. But Lisa is a renowned swimmer, so she jumps in to save him. This episode does a couple of things where none of the other two episodes do, where there's this symbolic visual that they do, where in the first episode, it opens with him like on the throne. You're using some. It looks cool, like with the lights kind of going, him sitting on the throne with his crown. And then in this, and when he gets dumped at the pool, there's a sequence where he is like chasing, like a crown is flying into the air or into the water, going up while he's drowning and falling down. And then she jumps in. It's very use of symbolism and artistry. It does not come back up again. Nothing is ever done that way. So I think in the pilot episode, they were trying some things and they're like, you know what? This doesn't work because there's no other point in this that actually has this. So let's yank that out. So we never see it again. If we do, I'd be interested to see where and why they choose that. But from that point on, it is never done like that again. He gets out the pool and he beats the shit out of his cousin. He's like, I'm gonna whoop your ass. He goes over, punches Connor because Connor's about to start some shit. He punches Connor and then he punches Carlton. And that's when the first episode ends. Second episode picks right up there as we see a YouTube video of him commencing to just beat the living shit out of Carlton. Like after the one punch, he then gets on top of him, gets the better of him because obviously out of the two of them, he's the better fighter and he starts punching him up. So we open with Aunt Viv talking to both of them like, what are you doing? And they go for a tit for tat where Carlton starts to feel like Aunt Viv is siding with Will. But in this, Aunt Viv learns that this is sort of over Lisa. And two, she's like, I'm not siding with him, but I understand why he acted the way he did. Because you shoved him in there when somebody can't swim. You could have killed him, could have risked his life. This is out of character for you. I don't know why you acted this way. So there's this angle happening that we're starting to see that the drugs that he is taking may not have always been there, and now he is starting to do things that are uncharacteristically like him. Which maybe if you take the drugs off, maybe he becomes more of a likable character. I don't know. So far, that is what he's doing. None of it works for me. But in the second episode called "Keep Your Head Up," it is Will's first day at school, and so he's sort of learning the ropes. He is going to class and nobody's there. And he winds up that, oh crap, they're all in an assembly where Carlton sort of one-ups him. He gets the one-up on him and kind of uses him as a display of saying, oh, this dude comes from a poor environment. Nobody's really paying that much attention to him. He's not that good of not that smart. Hasn't taken any AP class. He doesn't really belong here. But go ahead and give him a round of applause because we're helping that special needs kid. That's sort of how he treats it. Said a little earlier where Aunt Viv and Hillary don't seem to be on the same page. Aunt Viv has used some of her connects to give Hillary this opportunity to interview for what would be a paid position for cooking. But in doing so, Hillary would have to compromise a couple of things. And so what we get is a situation where she cooks her butt off and she kills it. And they're like, oh, cool, we like you. We would like to bring you on, but we want you to change every single thing about who you are. and that doesn't sit right with Hillary. What I do love in this series is that they've given Hillary some of this chutzpah to sort of speak up for herself. I think she was very ditzy and always looking for, I need a man, or I need to marry someone. Trevor, the infamous Trevor, saying I will marry you, and her whole life is crushed when that happens. She's very much the proponent and the purveyor of what it is that she's doing. So, which is cool to see. But in doing so, she gets on YouTube or her live stream and just blasts them and says that they don't care about basically pulls a Kanye and says they don't care about black people, which we know that's not going to go well for her. But we don't really get that in the second episode. We get the payoff of that in the third. Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil are having a heart-to-heart about what to do with Will. They don't know if this is going to work. Uncle Phil very much thinks that his entire campaign could sort of be ruined if Will continues to do this. And while at the fight, he acknowledges like, my son got his ass whooped, but he's also kind of like, hey, yes, I know Will wasn't the instigator of this, and we do need to have a talk with Carlton. But he seems they sort of come to this thing where they feel like Will is the determining factor of this. Wherever he goes, sort of chaos seems to follow. And so they want to go have a heart-to-heart conversation with him. But when they get up to his room, Will is bawling because he learns that Trey has been shot in retaliation. They can't find him, but they're sure they're gonna get both of them, the D-boys, back home in Philly. And so that sort of calms or quelches the conversation they were going to have, and they kind of just console him. So that's when all the school stuff happens, but Carlton sort of just keeps piling on. So the second episode is a lot of Will trying to figure out his footing in school. Like, I'm just trying to figure out where I fit in. His first day, he's trying to figure out where he can become. Until he can do something that gives him a name, he is always going to be this guy, this new kid, the reclamation project, if you will. So he attempts to go for basketball. The coach there is kind of like, I don't give a damn about your D1 stuff. And all I know is I got the tape of you whooping somebody's ass. So I can't really bring you into this team if that is who you are. And he's like, well, what can I do? He's like, we can have a tryout. We'll have tryouts come around. He's like, are you serious? It's me. I'm going to be Will. But coach is like, no, you got to try out. So with that, Will reaches out to Tyler, who he met in class a couple of days before, and kind of is like, hey, you're on the team. Is there anything that I can do to give myself a one-up or a leg up? And he tells him, like, yeah, be yourself, do what you do your thing. I know you can do it. But I think the coach likes people who put in a hard work and aren't braggadocious. So when you score, don't make someone else feel bad about this. Don't be demonstrative and all that stuff. Sort of what was the instigator for his fight in the first place, for all this to happen, when he completely was disrespectful to the D-boy on the ground. That's sort of what he's saying, don't do that here. And Will sort of takes that to heart. But in addition to that, Will has not picked up a ball since the incident in Philadelphia. So he is suffering from a bit of PTSD. His shot's not on. He's not hitting anything. It's just not coming together well for him. But then he meets up with Jazz, who's kind of like, what is going on? And he doesn't really, with whatever he's going on, he has to have a conversation with Jazz, but Jazz can't really unlock the issue. And it's at that point where Uncle Phil uses that moment to sort of like, maybe this is my way in. Like, because Jeffrey and he have a conversation. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with Will. And Jeffrey's like, I see there's something in this kid. Like, I can see him looking around, trying to fit in, trying to figure it all out. You need to go down and find that common ground with him. So he does. He goes to the court where Will is trying to get in, and Uncle Phil got a little game. He's shooting the rock. He's doing all right. Will is still missing. Will is still not there. Nothing is coming. It's not coming together for him. And they have a heart-to-heart, which is probably one of my favorite moments of the series so far. In that Uncle Phil asks Uncle Phil, have you ever been arrested? Uncle Phil's like, no, I haven't. He's like, it was demeaning. It was the worst experience. Like, I felt helpless. I could have been killed. I don't know what And in that, you could see that he was suffering from a lot of PTSD. Jabari is doing a really good job of delivering the moments of heart that this needs, while also being that braggadocious, swagger-filled kid, but also hitting those moments of humanity. He is the linchpin for all of this working, and I think some of his dynamics that he has with Uncle Phil help it out even more. Uncle Phil does unlock that whatever was holding him back, and Uncle Phil starts to hit. I mean, Will starts to hit those shots and start to get more into a rhythm, and it is not to the delight of Carlton, who is doing the Iago from the shadows, looking like ball butthurt that his cousin is getting a little bit more extra time with his dad than he does. Where this episode ends, and I believe I'm getting 2 and 3 sort of put together, but I believe where this episode ends is Will makes the team and goes to celebrate. He rubs it in Carlton's face a little bit. But then we see a sequence where as he's leaving, that security guard that chased him down earlier finds him and finds that there are drugs that are put in his bag. I say planted because we know that he wasn't on drugs. He doesn't know how they got there, but that's sort of how it ends. The next episode picks up with him being questioned by Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv. Both he and Carlton being questioned by Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv about how the drugs got on Will. Will says it's probably Connor, and if it's not Connor, it's your damn son. And Carlton's like, I don't know where it comes from, even though Connor cops to it. It's like, see, I told you I'd get rid of that dude. What we see in this episode is basically Carlton sort of spiraling even more down out of that rabbit hole. I don't know how this anxiety begins, and maybe that is, however that began or whatever did that was the impetus for that, and him taking these drugs and Xanax and sniffing them all the time. Maybe that will curb how much I just don't like his character. But right now, he becomes even less likable in this. But that's sort of the point, because you want him. They're using him in this series to be the foil that rises Will up while you have someone to hate to get to that point. It's just hard when they're cousins, and we know that they should be family. That it's hard to sort of swallow that. But what we get is we start seeing that spiral happen even more. He goes down the rabbit hole of going to a conference with his dad. And that used to be just something that he and his dad always used to do. Uncle Phil has invited Will to be a part of that after they do some searching, some soul searching to get Will out of suspension. Aunt Viv goes full on Philly mode. Like, you ain't look at the damn cameras? What the hell? Then why are we even having this conversation? So they get his suspension lifted, so they look it up. And then Carlton is kind of with Connor like, hey, we need to go ahead and end this. Like, part of me wanted Carlton, and I think I might have liked him a little bit more. If Carlton said, I need to do this, I had a bit of humanity. Because he gave a look where he saw Will getting in trouble and going away like, damn, I'm not fucking with this dude. But I really wouldn't want my cousin in this sort of a jam up. It seemed like that was his deal, but that's not it. He just didn't want it to blow back on him. And so he never gets to a point where it's like, hey, Cooper, you need to tell them. He's just like, hey, we now need to find out a third way or a way to kind of get this off of both of us so that we can just end this. And they do. And Will knows that either Carlton or Carlton or Connor put this on him. And he starts to approach him, and Carlton's like, take the win, because he just doesn't want to go into it further. He doesn't want any more research done on it. But then they get home, and so the one thing that he sort of had was that relationship with his father, and now Will is sort of impeding in on that. And so he takes him to this fundraiser, this crawfish boil that a lot of Uncle Phil's fraternity was at. And Uncle Phil has not been there for some time. He's not showing his face there. So a lot of those folks are like, hey, where you been? While he's been accumulating and accumulating all this money and accruing all this stuff, the relationships that he had are sort of have not been as strong. So they're just like, you don't roll with us that as much. And it's funny because Carlton in that moment, just to show you how the humanity of the two of them are, Will and Carlton are sort of asked by Uncle Phil to go and help out. They're going to be volunteers. Carlton is there for a message. I literally just want to have a conversation with this guy who can probably get me into this internship. Will is like, I'm just going to go. Uncle Phil wants me to help out. I'm going to go help out. So he's moving chairs. He's hustling. He's doing all of the things for this other gentleman. That is now, what we learn is that now is more in charge of the internship that Carlton wants to do. Is now he is the one responsible for it, and he's wasted all this time doing that. And he's like, oh, I hope he made a good impression with him when he hasn't, because he's been lazy on the phone and doing all these things where Will has been busting his ass doing it. We also learned that one of the people, the reverend that he needs to actually get into good graces with, Uncle Phil, has the most sort of distaste and disdain for him just because he hasn't been around or shown his ability to sort of be there for him. And they're about to leave. Uncle Phil's like, "Oh, I'm done. I just can't do anything here." And Will sees an opening to sort of get the step in which Uncle Phil used to be so known for, kind of bring that back at him. He found the avenue to sort of connect Uncle Phil back with his truth and what he used to be within that group, and he gets him to do his step routine, and everybody sort of comes in together. And then at the very least, he may not get the full endorsement. He'll still work on that, but he at least got the door open so that a conversation could happen between them and that. While Will is doing that on stage, putting on that bravado, interesting character. You still get another shot of old man Carlton Iago looking butthurt in the corner, like, I need to go sniff me some Xanax. This some bullshit. All the time. That's who he is as a character. So another level of something that he had that has been taken away from him. And it's interesting. He's built this sort of glass house that doesn't like that is built on cards, if you will. That you start taking one away, it starts all falling down. And I 100% see an overdose in his future. Like we're going to get to a point where he overdoses, and that is what sort of calms him back down. When or how that happens, or if we lose Carl, who knows? But I think that's the only way that this character can sort of top out, because this seems to be a way that they're just pushing him to be just completely and totally unlikable. While the crawfish boil is happening, Aunt Viv is having a sorority party with her girlfriends. They're all, some of them are giving her shit. Like, hey, you used to be a great artist. Like, you're doing things. You're being a mom. You're being the supporter of your husband. But you used to be something for yourself. Why isn't that still happening? And Joan is the main sort of purveyor of that. But we also learned that the sort of ramifications of what Hillary did with the video started coming to light. And her friends are like, yeah, your daughter effed up my business. And I'm trying to fix all of that. And she leaves, the woman who was upset, who basically got her the position and on bed sort of used to get that connection. She burns out and says, like, Hillary effed me. Viv's not happy because she's like, that was my connection. I got that for you. And they sort of watch the video, Joan and the other two girlfriends and Aunt Viv, and they watch the video. And all of them outside of Aunt Viv are supportive of it. Like, no, you spoke up for yourself. There's so many times when in my position, in my job, that I've just kind of like, I just swallow the racism. Like, it may be subtle racist, but like subtle racism. But I just take it because I need the job and I need to be a part of it. You have a little bit more flexibility. You can do it. So I'm proud of this, that this generation now feels the comfortable throwing up the fingers and saying, do what I got to do. Viv's not as much as supportive of that, because she says that you need to do something. You've been 2 years where you dropped out of school, you haven't had funds, like you need to do something, or at the very least, do this on your own, which she sort of pushes her towards later in the game when they go to Will's game. Speaking of Will's game, the plan was to go to half of the game for Will and half of the game for Carlton. Will was not playing at the beginning of the game, so they kind of wanted to wait at least probably till he got some time. But then that game started getting closer and closer. It became a good game. So at the point where they were about to leave and go to Carlton's lacrosse game, and it was sort of just, they were like, this is too good, we're enthralled. Carlton looks at the stands. And now, mind you, Will's not even checking for the stands. He knows they're there, but he's just like, I'm in the game. His desire to play the game is not based on the people that are out there watching him or his family watching him. Carlton's is. And so he's looking like, where the hell is everybody? Like, nobody's there. No one's in the stands, period, because it's lacrosse versus the game. So Will is already playing a sport that is just more well received at this high school than lacrosse. But also his family's not there. And so whatever drug he took before the game, it started to spaz out. He's making bonehead mistakes. He's getting overly penalties and physical. He's cussing out refs. He's just spiraling out of control. Another thing that Will has sort of taken from him in this world, and now he is sort of becoming the king of the campus. And his parents start Will's uncle and aunt, Carlton's parents, start to sort of not show favoritism, but they're showing enough attention that it starts to feel a type of way to Carlton, who already has anxiety, who already feels some type of way. And then on top of that, it's Xanax sniffing period. So once the game's over, he gets thrown to the penalty box, if you will. He gets ejected from the game. He goes and does another line of that good old Xanax. He gets another one in, and then he overhears how what's so raucous in the actual gymnasium that the game's going. He goes in. It's the last last 6 seconds of the game. Will is got the ball and they're down by 3 and down by 2 and Will hits a 3 for them to go up by 1 to win the game. And they start lifting him up. He's the big man on campus. He's the shit. And you get another shot of Carlton looking there like, this is some bullshit. Let me go get some more Xanax. And that's what he probably does. It's interesting to see the fall of Carlton. I don't particularly like the characterization, but it is an interesting play on like for Will to rise up and take the sort of the attention from his family. Is sort of doing more harm to Carlton, who was already in a bad way before he got there. This episode ends with Rashad, the D-boy who's the tough shit, finally seeing the clip because that shot goes viral and he becomes this big sensation. Because there's a D1 star now playing for Bel-Air. It's a news article that plays. He hits play and he sees that Will is playing for Bel-Air. And he's like, okay, cool. I know what I got to do now. He now knows where he's at. And that's where that third episode ends. So that's the first 3 episodes sort of coming together. What we get in the first 3 episodes is a pretty compelling story. It is engaging to the point where I do want to continue on. I will continue talking about these episodes. There are things that I like. I really love the Hillary angle in this, her being more a go-getter herself, an entrepreneur. I like Will a lot. Jabari is killing it as well. And I like that Lisa and he have a relationship of friendship. While yes, he's feeling her, but she's pulling back because of the mess that it's sort of creating between Carlton and Will. But I love that she is this fish out of water too. Like they are equal to each other. She is from a not well-to-do area. She is there on a scholarship. She's not of money as like most of the other two. So they still have that kindred sort of thing together. I love Uncle Phil. The 2 characters that I'm not quite feeling is Carlton, which just goes, I think you're supposed to hate him, so I think that's partially done on purpose. And Aunt Viv is just rubbing me the wrong way. I feel like Aunt Viv in the original series was very much that person that Will could kind of go off to. Like, she was a no-nonsense. Like, that dance sequence, she would be the person that, like, I can go confide in her, I can trust in her. Whereas this one has given up so much of herself that she is now expecting Hillary to do the same to sort of conform to some normal beliefs. And that just doesn't make sense for me for who that character was, not necessarily is in this series. But all in all, a pretty solid series. Like, I dig it. I am excited to see what happens more. I just want people to know that if you went in expecting this to be a one-to-one family drama along the lines of like This Is Us, I would say curb that and think of this more as Riverdale meets All American. Like, if you combine those two together, that's what this is, with the sheen or the skin of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on top of it. I'm excited to see what happens next. I'm excited to sort of figure out. Will seems to get really angry about when Uncle Phil calls him son, so I'm interested to see if the dad angle comes back into this. You know, that the famous Fresh Prince episode, Why Don't He Want Me, comes in. I wonder if that sort of comes into play at all. I wonder what happens. Because it cannot go on, if this goes on multiple seasons, it can't go on multiple seasons where the threat of what's in Philly comes here. I wonder how that all sort of comes together. I wonder if it harms anybody else. And I think that the biggest sort of surprise that we don't really get, that's sort of in the shadows of these first 3 episodes, aside from Ashley just not being important, is the Jeffrey part of it. There is more to Jeffrey than meets the eye. He is clearly Uncle Phil's right hand, and there's something else to him that I think we will get as these episodes go along. But I'm like excited to see what we get next. It feels fresh, it feels new, and it is smart that this is not a direct tie or direct recreation of what happened in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because I think that could get old and get judged incorrectly very quickly. I think this is you use that concept as a jumping point, the YouTube thing that they made. Use that as a jumping point, and now you're sort of off to the races, sort of do your own thing. And I think they're getting there. I think they're finding their footing. I would say by episode 6 or episode 7 of this, I think they'll be well on their way to saying, okay, yeah, this is now its own thing, and I dig it. What did you guys think about the first 3 episodes of Bel-Air? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDigit@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.